Hello, dear friends and curious souls. Welcome to the story of me and you, where we go beyond the headlines and dive into the mysteries that define us, our memories, myths, and the questions we've carried for generations. Today, we begin a journey into a legend that has stirred hearts for centuries. The story of Atlantis, the majestic city swallowed by the sea, yet never truly gone. This isn't just a story about a sunken land. It's about us, about who we are when everything we build is taken away, and what survives inside. There's something haunting about silence under the sea. It holds secrets no scream can reach. For centuries, sailors, dreamers, and scholars have spoken in reverent awe of a city. Not just any city, but the city, Atlantis. A place that seemed too perfect to be real, and yet too familiar to forget. We begin our investigation, not in the depths of the ocean, but in a dusty corner of a quiet library in Athens. It's here that the first known whispers of Atlantis were recorded by Plato, the great philosopher. He didn't speak of a fairy tale, no. He spoke of history, handed down from the Egyptian priests of Sai. Plato's description wasn't poetic, it was precise. He wrote of Atlantis as a superpower, a beacon of innovation, prosperity, and spiritual grandeur. But he also wrote of pride, of arrogance, and of how quickly it all came undone. There occurred violent earthquakes and floods, he wrote, and in a single day and night of misfortune, all your warlike men sank into the earth, and the island of Atlantis disappeared into the depths of the sea. And in those words, we don't just read history, we feel warning. It's impossible not to wonder, what would it feel like to lose everything in a single night? A city where children played, where poets wrote verses to the stars, where lovers made promises by candlelight. All gone, swallowed whole. Somewhere deep in our collective soul, Atlantis touches a wound we all carry, the fear of losing what we love, and the longing for a second chance. We travel across ancient maps and forgotten coastlines, speaking with oceanographers, archaeologists, and spiritual historians. Could Atlantis have been real? Could echoes of it still exist, beneath the sea, or perhaps inside of us? Next time we seek evidence, not just in stone or scripture, but in the human spirit. The deeper we dig, the louder the silence becomes. Atlantis is a name echoed by many, but confirmed by none. And yet, the trail is there, if we choose to follow it, not just across the seafloor, but across time and soul. We begin our search in a place few would expect. Southern Spain, near the marshlands of Donana National Park. Here, satellite imaging revealed something peculiar. Circular formations, too symmetrical to be nature's work, too ancient to belong to us. Dr. Richard Freund, an archaeologist and biblical scholar, believes these are remnants of a city that may have once inspired Plato's Atlantis. Atlantis was real, he told us, eyes scanning the horizon as the wind whispered through the reeds, but not as a fantasy, rather as a memory burned into our ancestral psyche. From Spain to the coastlines of Morocco, to the lost city of Thonis Heracleion, buried beneath the waters of Egypt, the evidence keeps whispering, something did vanish. And what's more chilling, nearly every ancient culture remembers a flood, a destruction, a drowning. These weren't just stories, they were warnings encoded into myth, like rescue flares fired across millennia. Ancient Sumerians told of a god warning a man named Zusudra to build a boat. In India, Manu was guided by a fish to survive a flood. The Maya spoke of world cycles, drowned in water, only to be reborn. And then, there's the great flood of the Bible, Noah's Ark, a divine reckoning for a humanity that had lost its way. Whether you believe these stories are literal or symbolic, their message is unshakably clear. Civilizations rise, civilizations fall, only the soul remains. Beneath all the maps, the sonar scans, the broken columns buried in silt, we're chasing something far more human, a truth that can't be touched, only felt. Maybe that's why people are still searching. Not for lost cities, but for lost selves. For the moment before pride overcame gratitude, before progress outran wisdom. Atlantis is not just a place, it's a mirror. When a great city falls, it doesn't disappear overnight. It echoes. It echoes in the cracks of old statues, in the fading chants of forgotten prayers, in the dust of abandoned altars. It echoes not just through history, but through us. Atlantis, as Plato described, did not fall by chance. It fell by choice. A choice to turn from humility to hubris, from balance to domination, from reverence for the divine to worship of the self. Archaeologist and mythologist Dr. Sophia Layton told us, every time we dig up a collapsed civilization, we're not just uncovering their ruins, we're unearthing our own patterns. She points to the sudden collapse of the Bronze Age civilizations, Mycenae, the Hittites, and others. Within a short span of years, thriving societies vanished. Trade networks dissolved, cities were burned, people scattered. And they all tell similar stories, she said, about gods being forgotten, greed rising, and nature responding with fire or flood. Sound familiar? Underscore, 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 underscore. There's a moment, often right before the fall, when civilizations begin to forget the pain that birthed them, forget the sacredness of balance, forget that every stone laid must honor something higher than itself. Atlantis, too, once honored the gods. Its temples were said to be radiant, its priests wise, but power grew faster than wisdom. And then came the silence. The Greek myths say the gods looked upon the city and wept, not for the destruction, but for what had become of their beloved creation. It's hard not to ask, are we any different? We live in glass towers and call it progress. We chase convenience and call it freedom. But deep down, something feels out of place, fragile, temporary. What if Atlantis isn't warning us about the past, but the present? A fall is only fatal, Dr. Layton says. If you learn nothing on the way down, not all was lost. That's the quiet miracle in every collapse. What endures is not always stone and steel. It is story, memory, and spirit. And in the case of Atlantis, some believe, survivors carried more than just their lives. They carried knowledge. Anthropologists and cultural historians have found strange commonalities across ancient civilizations. Pyramid structures across Egypt, Mesoamerica, and Asia. Flood myths on every continent. Similar star maps, similar gods. Is it coincidence? Or the echo of something once shared, then scattered? The Hopi people of North America tell of a great flood and a lost world beneath the ocean. So do the Dogon of Mali, the Maori of New Zealand, and the Quechua of Peru. These stories are not copy-paste myths. They are living memories, passed through chants, carvings, dreams, and ceremonies. Some elders like Amapacha, a Quechua spiritual leader we met in the Andes, believe they are the last keepers of this ancient voice. We don't remember Atlantis with maps, she said, placing her hand on her chest. We remember it here. Atlantis may have been swallowed by the sea, but its essence seems to have floated, like seeds scattered by wind growing in different soils. Some believe the survivors fled to other lands, bringing fragments of their knowledge, medicine, astrology, sacred geometry. Some even believe they helped build new civilizations. But the most important thing they carried? The lesson that nothing man-made can last forever. That power, without compassion, leads to ruin. That the soul must stay rooted, even as cities rise. Maybe that's why these stories won't fade. Because they don't live in books. They live in people, and grandmothers who hum old lullabies, and children who dream of flying cities. And you, who wonders what the world was before noise, and what it might become again. We are all, in some way, survivors of something ancient. And if Atlantis still speaks, it speaks through the quiet parts of us that still remember. In the next episode, we enter the most mysterious and controversial part of the legend, technology. Was Atlantis truly more advanced than we imagine? Did they master energy we still don't understand today? Let's uncover the stories of the crystal towers, flying machines, and the energy that lit their skies. What if the future came from the past? That's the question haunting researchers, mystics, and curious minds when they study Atlantis, not just as legend, but as a possibility. According to clairvoyant Edgar Cayce, Atlantis was more than a spiritual utopia. It was a technological marvel. They harnessed the power of crystals, Cayce once said, as clean energy sources, capable of healing, powering aircraft, and even connecting to realms beyond this world. Many dismissed it as fantasy. But deep within ancient texts and newly unearthed ruins, strange hints emerge, suggesting a civilization that may have touched the stars long before us. One of the most enduring symbols in Atlantean lore is the fire crystal, or Ta'awai stone. Said to be a giant energy crystal at the heart of Atlantis, it powered cities, ships, even communication with spiritual dimensions. This crystal wasn't just myth, it was a metaphor for balance. When used with wisdom, it healed and elevated. When corrupted by greed, it destroyed. The crystal pulsed like a heart, Cayce wrote, When its rhythm was in harmony with the divine, Atlantis flourished. When it fell out of tune, the earth groaned. Accounts from multiple ancient cultures hint at flying ships, metal birds, and light towers that never burned out. Indian Vedas speak of Vimanas, flying chariots described with technical detail. Mayan legends recall sky mirrors and beings descending in light. Could these stories be misunderstood descriptions of technology? Even today, researchers like Dr. Elena Mirov are exploring ancient quartz crystal sites in South America, discovering unusual energy fields and geomagnetic anomalies. She told us, "I'm not saying they had Wi-Fi," she laughs, "but they knew something about energy and Earth resonance that we are just beginning to rediscover." If Atlantis did have this knowledge, why did it disappear? Why didn't it survive in textbooks or temples? Perhaps the answer is not in the mind, but the heart. Maybe they didn't lose their technology. Maybe they lost their center, their connection to the sacred, and with that disconnection, everything else unraveled. Because the greatest technology of any civilization is not what it builds. It's what it remembers to honor. It began with rain, or so the stories say. Rain that didn't stop, waves that swallowed mountains, and silence that followed the screams. A flood so massive, so final, that entire worlds were washed away. From Mesopotamia to Mesoamerica, from the highlands of Tibet to the islands of Polynesia, nearly every ancient culture remembers a great flood. The names change, the gods differ, but the warning remains the same. In the Sumerian epic of Gilgamesh, a man is warned by a god to build a massive boat. In the Bible, Noah receives similar instructions. In India's Mahabharata, Manu is saved by a talking fish who knows the flood is coming. These are not isolated tales. They form a pattern, as if humanity experienced something too big, too painful to forget, so we turned it into myth. But what if it wasn't myth at all? Modern geology supports the possibility of a cataclysmic flood event around 11,000, 12,000 years ago at the end of the last ice age. Melted glaciers could have caused oceans to rise dramatically, flooding coastal cities, Atlantis among them. Geologist Dr. Randall Smith explains, "We've found underwater ruins, sediment layers, and ancient shorelines far inland. Something big did happen. The myths are echoing geology. But more than a natural disaster, some believe the flood was a reset, a spiritual cleansing of a humanity that had strayed too far, underscore, 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 underscore. We've all felt floods in our lives, moments where everything we thought was stable dissolves. A loss, a failure, a heartbreak, a silence after a storm. Maybe that's why the flood myth speaks to us so deeply, because it isn't just about destruction, it's about clearing space, so something new can grow. Atlantis may have been lost, but what if the flood gave humanity a second chance? In the next chapter, we ask, is the spirit of Atlantis returning? Are we beginning to remember what we once forgot? About energy, balance, humility, and hope. We meet modern thinkers, scientists, and spiritual teachers who believe Atlantis is not gone, it's awakening. They say history repeats itself, but what if it remembers itself? Around the world, in quiet labs and sacred halls, something is stirring. Scientists, spiritual teachers, and visionaries are asking the same question. Are we remembering Atlantis? Not as a place, but as a way of being. Some say the rise of clean energy, meditation, and quantum awareness is no accident. It's a cycle returning, a light rekindling. Atlantis was not a myth, said energy researcher Dr. Lucia Rain. It was a frequency, a higher state of collective consciousness, and I believe it's returning. People everywhere are starting to look inward. Ancient practices like sound healing, sacred geometry, and breathwork are resurfacing, not as trends, but as tools for reconnection. The obsession with control, speed, and competition is being challenged by values like balance, empathy, and cooperation. The world, it seems, is searching for its center again. In the ruins of what we've built, there is a whisper. Come back to the source. Atlantis, Butuanqua Tiem Nang, Atlantis, perhaps was never just a lost city. Maybe it was a metaphor for what we're capable of when we remember who we are, when we live in harmony with Earth, when we honor spirit as much as science, when we seek wisdom, not just power. What if Atlantis isn't rising from the sea, but from our consciousness? Each of us, said spiritual teacher Arian Sol, carries a spark of Atlantis. When we live with truth and compassion, that light returns. underscore 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 underscore. Maybe the fall of Atlantis wasn't the end. Maybe it was a pause, a deep breath of Earth, waiting for us to listen now, as the world trembles again. Climate change, division, disconnection. We must ask, will we fall like Atlantis, or rise from its memory? The choice, as always, is ours. You've followed us through the ruins, the myths, the memories. We've searched the ocean floor and the stars. We've listened to scholars and shamans, scientists and seers, and now, at the end, the answer may not be buried beneath the sea. It may be buried within us. Maybe Atlantis was never about the past. Maybe it was a story for the future, told in reverse, a mirror held up to our civilization, a whisper saying, "You've been here before. Don't forget this time." Because every generation builds its own Atlantis, its own moment of greatness, and its own moment of choice. This story, like all great stories, ends where it began, inside the human soul. And so, dear listener, if one day someone asks you, "Do you believe Atlantis was real?" you can smile and say, "Yes, I see it every day, in the way we love, in the way we rebuild, in the light we carry forward. Because Atlantis isn't lost. Atlantis is you,